is who's actually responsible for the chemical weapons attack on August 21st. Now, the entire world seems to assume that that was Assad because the rebel territory got gassed. The UN weapons inspectors have come in to the region. They've said that there was a gas attack. That's all they know. So that evidence alone, I don't think is enough to mount an international campaign to topple the Assad regime. Because as evil as this is, it's not beyond my imagination that the rebels could have gassed themselves. Because the entire world, the rebels have been trying to get the international community to intervene for 2 years on their behalf. Now, the world has been reluctant to get involved. The one thing they said they would get involved is if Assad used chemical weapons. So if you're Bashar al-Assad and you're winning this war of attrition, you have the military capabilities. It's going slow, but he's not in any danger of losing. What's the one stupid thing that you would do that would guarantee that the entire world come down on you? Use chemical weapons. So he has no reason, and there's no logical reason why he would use chemical weapons. Now the rebels have every motive in the world to demonstrate that Assad used chemical weapons, because then they could come in and win the war. Now, is that assuming the worst of the rebels? Yes, but I don't typically assume the best of Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. So the Obama administration has said that they have evidence, but we've not seen any of their evidence. They say they've had phone calls that they intercepted that make it seem like the government, like Assad's government, was perpetrating this crime. But there's not a single shred of actual evidence that the Assad regime committed this crime. Now, it's true that they use the same type of gas that Assad has, but there are other people in the region who have gas or who could get that gas. And once again, we know that the Saudis have an interest in the Muslim Brotherhood coming to power, or at least in deposing Assad. We know that Yemen has an interest in deposing Assad. So there are powerful forces in the region that could very easily get the rebels gas. And it's even possible that the rebels could have happened upon some gas in the fighting. So I think considering that there's no evidence to pin this on Assad and that there's compelling motive that the rebels would have, it's definitely not clear-cut that Assad was the one who used gas. That would be the one thing that wouldn't make sense for him to do. The other question I had here in this briefing is, does the president have the authority to strike Syria? Now, the War Powers Resolution gave the president, Congress gave the president broad authority to use the military if the United States was under attack or if the United States was under the threat of imminent attack. The War Powers Resolution says that the president, without consulting Congress, can activate the military and engage them for a period. It's either 60 or 90 days. I believe it's a period of 90 days. Is it 60 days? So it's a period of 60 days without any congressional approval. So the president is claiming that he has the power, before he decided he was going to consult Congress, that he had the power to just unilaterally act and have a military strike against Syria. Well, the War Powers Resolution does not give the president the power to just use the military however he wants. The U.S. has to be under attack or under imminent threat of attack. There's no imminent threat of attack from Syria. Syria has not threatened the United States, nor has it said it would attack the United States. So if the president did want to commit to military action, he would have to get congressional authorization from Congress, which he decided to do and then didn't have the votes to do it, so decided to not have the vote. So looking at this situation, there's a moral outcry against these people who died. I think it was 1,400 people who were gassed. But there's been 100,000 people who've died in this crisis already. Dying of gas is an awful way to die, but so is bleeding to death from bullet wounds. So I don't really see why all of a sudden that someone was gassed, it necessitates international action. Now, people would say also that if Assad did commit, if his administration did do the chemical gas, that it was a violation of international law. I'll have to cry foul on that as well, because Syria was one of the few countries in the world that was not a party to the Chemical Weapons Convention. So they never agreed to not use chemical weapons anyway. So even though they broke international norms, they didn't even break international law. They never said they wouldn't. Now, just on the 14th, they did sign that treaty, and they've agreed to turn over their chemical weapons to Russia. That's kind of just a briefing on the situation. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have three.
Sure.
First question. So this whole thing with Syria could probably be understood as infighting between the Sunni and the Shiite sects
Well,
at the broad level?
not exactly, because Assad's regime is aligned with the Shiites, but it's a secular regime.
Okay.
He's
Oh,
just,
it is,
yeah,
okay.
he's just a dictator.
Okay, so
But he's friends with the Shiites.
All right. In case you'll forgive me, I have four questions.
Sure.
You mentioned that Yemen was much interested in promoting the Muslim Brotherhood. Is this Yemen the government or the terrorists within Yemen?
This is a government,
Okay.
and that's because they have a financial interest
This pipeline.
in getting control of the pipeline that goes to Europe.
Okay, my third question is, what do you think Obama's angle is here? Why is he so wrapped up in this? Why is this so near and dear to his heart that he wants to intervene, especially since he was a vocal critic of the Iraq War? I mean, this is the only thing. I have a theory, but I'd like to hear yours.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure. It's quite a double standard because he was totally against intervention in Iraq, and I think it's because he put his credibility on the line when he made the red line. I don't think he should have done that. I think he unwisely drew a red line, and now his credibility is called into question. Unfortunately, the credibility of the United States is called into question because he said, if you do this, there'll be a military strike. I don't think a military strike is wise, but I think either way, President Obama's credibility has been severely damaged. Now, I think that's part of the reason why he decided to seek congressional approval, is because that's really what lines up with his ideology, is that the president needs congressional approval. So he went ahead and did that, and then that would give him cover. If he got congressional approval, he would at least have the political cover if it didn't go well. Because that's the other thing about a strike, is they weren't going to try to remove Assad from power, and it wasn't possible to destroy the chemical weapons because then you could possibly gas everyone in the neighborhoods where the chemical weapons were. So the strike was, before it even happened, was going to be inconsequential. It wasn't going to remove Assad from power. It wasn't going to destroy their capacity to use chemical weapons. It wasn't really going to do anything. So the Tomahawk missiles, they're like $1 million a piece. So we were going to spend $100 million
To wag our fingers.
sending a message, and then Assad would rise from the smoke unharmed, and I think that would have further damaged our image. So there was a no-win situation there.
This leads to my final question. Do you see any parallels or differences between the Iraq War and the reasons that were given and this war? What's different about it? Did you support one or the other? I mean, no.
Sure. I think the main difference was that the United States had credible evidence, turned out to be not so good, but they had credible evidence that the United States was under threat of attack from Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein had committed acts of aggression in the region before, and he had tried to assassinate George H.W. Bush. So I think that he posed a credible military threat, and this was 2 years after September 11th when the United States had been attacked. So the political climate was a little different. We had been attacked when we hadn't been attacked on our soil since Pearl Harbor. There's no chance of Assad attacking us. There's no threat to us at all. It's really just us deciding we want to try to enforce international norms. Now, it's also interesting you bring up what is the president thinking here. I'm not sure, because there are genocides going on around the world. There are civil wars going on around the world. So why would the United States choose to intervene in this one and get involved in this one? It doesn't make sense, because we're not the world's police. Our foreign policy is paid for by taxpayer dollars. So what we spend money on our foreign policy needs to benefit the United States. It needs to be in our interest only.
Permission to proper theory?
Sure.
I think, it's just me, I think the way Obama and Kerry were looking at the situation is they saw an oppressor, Assad, being,